Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special Friday night edition of The People Show on intellectualradio.com, Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube. Make sure you check out my YouTube channel. Go to Mark J. Wallace, The People's Show on YouTube, and register there. Become one of the registered subscribers. There's no cost to subscribe or anything like that. We just want to get our viewing audience up. Tonight, we're going to be talking about, on this special edition of the People Show, we're going to be talking about the state's attorney, Eileen O'Neill Burke, that decided that she was going to change the policy. So, Cook County State's attorney expands a pilot program to streamline charging process for low-level gun possessions. She claims that it's going to be more efficient charging process, getting police officers back on the street sooner, which is a false claim. All bypass cases to date have withstood legal scrutiny, which is also a false claim. The Chicago Cook County State's Attorney Eileen O'Neill Burke and the Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snellen announced the expansion of what they call a successful pilot program that streamlines charging process for lowering felony gun cases, easing a significant strain on police and prosecutors' resources across Chicago, which is another misnomer. The pilot was initially launched in January at the Chicago Police Department 7th District in Inglewood, which is a predominantly black community. About 91% of the community there is black. There has been some diversity in terms of a upward mobility of the Hispanic community, but it is still predominantly black. And it enables responding police officers in consultation with their supervisors to file contained common nonviolent felony gun possession charges directly instead of waiting for Cook County State's Attorney's Office felony review approval. Based on what they claim to be positive results from the 7th District, where all bypass cases have thus far withstood legal scrutiny, there's some question about that. The pilot is expanding to CPD's 5th police district, which is largely the Roseland community that has now gone into effect. The felony review bypass program is an effort to address a long-standing bottleneck in Cook County's criminal justice system and lets police and prosecutors more effectively marshal resources towards violent crime, obtaining justice and for victims of crime, State's Attorney Burke stated. These are straightforward gun possession cases that nevertheless can take hours to get through felony review. Rather than take a police officer off the beat while awaiting felony review callback, this program equips them with the tools and training to file appropriate charges directly and get back on the streets. It is also allows felony review prosecutors to focus on the most serious crimes. Now, this is always, in my opinion, the mantra that they use to excuse to do anything that they want to do in the police department. Now, the so-called charges that this will cover, they cover unlawful possession of a weapon, unlawful possession of a weapon by a felon, and aggravated unlawful possession of a weapon. Now, and there are many of us who have a serious problem with how this was rolled out. Number one, it was the first thing that the Cook County State's Attorney's Office did after they got elected, and they put this forth in some innocuous newspaper. There was never any consultation with the public defender's office. There was never any consultation or notices sent out to the police oversight committees that were just elected in this past election, whatsoever. They didn't find out about this until months later. This was rolled out January 1. Now, we have serious problems with this. And of course, we have been talking with different experts within the legal field. We've talked with people at the public defender's office who have serious concerns with it. We certainly have had one town hall meeting. The community has very serious concerns with it. And we've talked to some other criminal defense attorneys. And coming on to talk with us tonight about it and to share his view about what is happening is criminal defense attorney Francis Baumgart of Baumgart and Associate, who is here with us. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Attorney Baumgart, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so you've heard about this. You and I have talked about this offline, and we have questioned the validity of it. We have questioned the legality of it, and certainly we are questioning the ethics of this. On the surface, it seems to be problematic simply because the state's attorney did this, we would say, unilaterally with the superintendent of police without involving any discussions from a broader conversation of this. What is your view on this, and how problematic do you see this?
I don't really see that it's going to make a whit of difference for this reason. When I was a young state's attorney, which every defense attorney was, either a public defender most of the time, and before they had what's called felony review, I remember the guy who started, Joe Russo, the police would file their complaints, they would make their charges, and they would send them to the state's attorney. As an example, if there was a rape, which happened 3 months ago, and it was looked at objectively, you probably couldn't prove it. I mean, if somebody gets raped and they go right away, it's one thing. 3 months later, who knows, okay? Is it beyond a reasonable doubt? My point, Mark, is that the state's attorney was sick of having cases which couldn't be proved. Cases that may have happened, but couldn't be proved. For example, the rape. Let's assume there actually was a rape 3 months ago. Whether there was or wasn't is not the issue. The issue is whether the state's attorney can prove the case. In a gun case, so what they did was they allegedly filtered out the cases that couldn't be proven from those cases that could. You and I talked about indictments. I'm sure you've heard the expression, you can indict a ham sandwich. These are all just forms that the state goes through. It has really nothing to do with the merits of it. The merits are only at the time of trial. And if it's a public defender, 98, 97% of the time, they just plead them guilty. It really doesn't matter to this. And I'm not talking about a particular particular public defender, but if you have a public defender and you plead guilty to a case because you've been sitting in jail for 6 months and you're told you can go home then if you plead guilty, but if you don't plead guilty, we're going to be another month or another year. If the case cannot be proven, and you sit in jail for 6 months, this is before the people couldn't afford $750 in bond sometimes. They'd sit in pre-trial incarceration for months at a time. If the case couldn't be proven, if it actually got to trial, but the person was sick of being in jail, they'd plead. You asked me what's my take on what's happening is the police have the legal right to charge anybody with anything. And the rest is just talk until it actually comes down to being proven. And if it can't be proven, then it's going to be thrown out. The question is, what happens to the guy or the lady who's sitting in jail or who is on electronic monitoring or whatever between when they're arrested and when it actually gets to trial. Or if it doesn't get to trial and they plead guilty, not because they did it, but simply because they just don't want to be locked up any longer, it's totally unjust. Now, nobody said life is fair, but it's just outrageous that the state can't filter, not can't, they don't want to. If they want to put the money into it, if they cared enough about people who don't have any money, they would do something about it. I don't really think the state does. The state wants to make sure that things just continue to run as they run. The people may be getting sick of it. The defense attorneys like myself and all the other defense attorneys I know are sick of that. But the state can't, not the state, the police can file whatever charges they want. Their problem is they have to prove it down the line. But the real problem is what happens to the person who's arrested before he gets to trial, if he ever gets to trial. And if he's sitting in jail for 6 months and he's told, it's only a couple more months, you can go home if you plead guilty. But if you don't plead guilty, we're going to have to keep this going for another 2 years. That person's probably going to plead guilty. Whether they did it or not has nothing to do with the reality of it. It has nothing to do with it. And it's that interim between when you're arrested and when you actually go to trial, if you go to trial. And if you don't go to trial, then nobody knows any better about it. You've pled guilty, and that's the way it is. He must have done it. Otherwise, why would he have pled guilty? I mean, I know why he would have pled guilty. And anybody who deals with the criminal justice system knows why somebody would plead guilty, even if they didn't do it. And I'm not talking about being tortured overtly. I'm just talking about sitting in a jail for months. That's it. And so the police have the right, as far as I know, and I've been doing this for 30 years, they have the right to charge anyone with anything. They have the power. Let me say it again. There's a difference between power and right. If you're a policeman, and I'm not talking about the present policeman, but I'm talking about the ones I've dealt with the last 30 years. If you beat somebody up on the street, just beat the heck out of them. That's power. It's not a right. They don't have the right to do that. They have a right to stop you. They have a right to arrest you. They have a right to send you to court. But they also have the power to beat the hell out of you. When it gets to court, then your rights technically are taken care of. But that's the problem. What happens between when you're arrested? See, you're arrested for nothing. You're standing there. You don't know anything about what's going on. You just get arrested because you're black, or because you look poor, or because you look like you're powerless. You get arrested, and then you're indicted. An indictment has no meaning at all. It's not like if you're indicted, boy, you must have done it. I don't even look at indictments anymore. I mean, I look at indictments, but I mean, it doesn't matter what the cop says. It's one-sided. If I told you what a terrible person somebody was, and I didn't tell you anything good about him, and you don't know whether I'm telling the truth or not, you probably believe me. If somebody else comes in and says, now, here's the other side of the story, that's one thing. But that's not what happens in a true bill. There's just it's a rubber stamp as far as any defense attorney is concerned. Just rubber stamp. They hear one lopsided story of what happened. A cop comes in and he tells, by cop, I mean a constable on patrol. I mean a police officer. But he just tells whatever he wants to tell. If he tells the truth, that's great. But if he doesn't, he can say, well, gee, I may have misunderstood what my partner told me. I wasn't really paying attention, but my partner told me that this happened. And so he testifies before the grand jury. The guy gets indicted. The next 6 months of his life are hell because he's on electronic monitoring, or he can't work, or whatever. And nothing is done about the fact that there was no basis for this in the first place. Nothing's done about that until it gets to trial, if it gets to trial. And whether it gets to trial is really where I see the problem. The cops can charge anybody. Incidentally, if you don't need, there's a thing called a preliminary hearing, which technically is supposed to, what's the word? You filter out all of the chaff. Like when if you get dried corn and you put it in a pestle and then you lift it up and blow away all the stuff, and the stuff that's that's really heavy goes in back into the container, you've gotten rid of the chaff. So technically what's supposed to happen is the judge listens on a preliminary hearing. You get arrested. You get a preliminary hearing if it's not that big of a deal, or if it's not that high profile of a case, if people aren't really watching, or get indicted. But if you get, say it's a drug case, several tokes, all right? The officer says he saw the guy 300 yards away selling this to another person. Well, the judge says, no, that can't be true. I mean, whether it's true or not, you can't prove it that far away unless he has binoculars, which of course they say sometimes. But that being the case, they throw the case out. So the chaff is just thrown out, and just the real cases are prosecuted. But that's not true at all, because you don't even have to have a preliminary hearing. You're not entitled to a preliminary hearing. You are entitled to be indicted. But indictment to a defense attorney has no meaning. It doesn't. There's a difference between arraignment and a indictment. You get arrested, they can hold you for 2 days, and they can cross-examine you and all this, and they can torture you without in any way hurting you physically. But like if it's a really, really cold room, and every one of my clients have been in a cold room, nobody talks to them for hours and hours. And then the police come in and ask them questions, and they either confess or they don't confess, or the best thing they can possibly say is, I have nothing to say. That's the best they can say. But when they are arrested, they are then supposed to be brought before a judge to give a determination of bond. You got rid of the old bond system where some people couldn't even afford enough money to get out. Even if it to other people didn't seem like a lot of money, it was a lot of money. $750 is a lot of money to some people. $7,500, 10 times that, is not a big deal to other people. But to people who really have nothing, it's a big deal. And if they can't come up with it, that just wasn't fair. So some politician, wanting to look good, I think, gets rid of the bond. And so now it's just a matter of whether you're a threat to the community, and if you're not, then you just get electronic monitoring. Plus, we don't have to worry about feeding you in jail and all that stuff. But after you have this determination of whether or not, based on the judge's bond setting, he doesn't set a bond any longer, but his evaluation of what kind of a person you are, whether you're a threat to the community, whether you're a flight risk or not. And if you're one of those two things, you can go to jail to make sure you show up in court. But if you're not a threat, say you say it's alleged you beat up your wife. Let's assume you beat up your wife, which is in no way justified at all. But you're not a threat to the community. You're a threat to your wife. So you stay away from her, like a GPS, a certain geographical area. But if you're not a threat to the community, you'll have what's called a monitor on your ankle or something like that. But they used to have what's called a preliminary hearing, at which time the judge would throw out the chaff and save the real cases. And then they'd send it to be indicted. Well, that is a bottleneck. Without question, it's a bottleneck. But who cares? The people who care are the people who are caught in the bottleneck. The people who are there for months waiting for something to happen, waiting to go to trial, and nothing happens. And so the cops have a right they have the power and the right. They have the right to charge anybody with any crime. Now, they're always going to say there was probable cause for that. I mean, we wouldn't just arrest somebody without probable cause, which is not necessarily true at all. But who cares whether they have probable cause or not, unless you have to determine that? Well, that's what the judge is for. The judge does determine whether there was probable cause. And if there wasn't, the case is thrown out. But the police officer, when he goes to the grand jury, will always say, this guy did this and he did that and he did that. And who's to say opposite? No one, because no one gets into the grand jury except the police and the state's attorney. So I could go on forever. I mean, can you be more specific about what you want to know?
Well, the problem is you started out by saying you don't think it's going to make one bit of difference, but I think that there are those of us and others who are concerned that if it's not going to make one bit of difference, then why are they changing this? Because the way that she's postured this is to address this like there's a personnel problem. Well, if you have a personnel problem, deal with your personnel problems, but you compromise people's freedoms and due
Right.
process in this process by saying to the police, all right, we're going to step out of the way and we're going to defer this to your judgment to make the determination. And then if you're saying that you're doing this for that there are no victims and it is from and
I'm
which
not
I don't
saying there's
understand
no victim.
how
I'm not
well
saying
this is how they're posturing it, that these are
right.
victimless
Right.
of crime. But in my view, in other people's views, there are victims. It's the people that you are alleging that you are arresting and that you're making these charges to. And the question comes, if you're saying that these people have unlawful possession of a weapon, how do you know that this person has an unlawful
That's my
possession of a
point.
weapon? And so
Because
this is the problem that we see with this, or one of the problems that we see with it.
there's no question there's a problem. There's no question there are people who are suffering as a result of it. What I'm saying it doesn't make a difference of is what I'm talking about is simply this is just talk. The cops, you see, if we want a dictatorship, like in the South American countries, a lot of them have dictators. Well, if you're
Mhm.
black or you're driving a beater or you look disheveled or you look powerless, that's basically what it is. Not even color, it's powerless. But if you look like you're not going to make a big deal about it, they can arrest you on the street with no reason at all and claim there is probable cause. I saw him threatening this woman. I mean, but the point is, they can arrest anyone. And it's totally at the discretion of the police officer. So they can stop any car they want. They can search it. It's called toss the car. And if there's anything in it, bust out the taillight. They can do that. That's not something they have a right to do, but I'm saying it happens without question. Some petty ass deal like he wasn't wearing his seatbelts or something. That's why we stopped him. That is not why they stopped him. They stopped him because they stopped every single car that is a stereotype. And if there's a gun in it, they come up with a good, in quotes, a good reason to stop them. Probable cause. Or if there's no gun in it, maybe they let him go. Probably let him go. But the point is, the cops are the ones who are making the determination. There's a difference in America between the legislative, the judicial, and the executive. The executive are the cops, the ones that enforce the law, the ones who determine whether the law is being violated is the judiciary. Well, if there's a lapse between the arrest and when it gets to the judiciary, which is the case most of the time, if there's a bottleneck, it's the people who are in the middle who are suffering. Cops just go to the next car, the next car. It's like a barbershop. Next. Stop with every car if they have probable cause. And I'm saying it again. If there's a gun, they quote have probable cause. But how did they know that in the first place? They didn't, except they stopped the car and they make up something. And I don't mean I know the cop who did that at all, but I've been doing this for 30 years. I know that's what happens. Now, all of my clients could have lied to me. That's true. And the police could have been pristine, but I know better. I mean, come on. I used to be a state's attorney. And the sense that probable cause is left up not to the judiciary, whose job it is to determine whether there's probable cause, but to the executive, to the cops, to let them do it is like having a dictatorship. What the heck? The cops get to raise whomever they want for any reason they want.
Yeah, they get to determine, they get to make that determination. And if they don't like you, or, if there are certain groups of people.
It doesn't matter what it is. It just doesn't matter.
Well, but here's the another problem with this is that the Cook County State's Attorney, who did not show up to this meeting herself. She sent her policy maker or whatever that person's title is to come to this town hall to be, the mouthpiece for the Cook County State's Attorney, who didn't have, in my judgment, the courage to come to the community to explain her justification for making this decision, and then to say that they're doing it in Inglewood at the 7th district because there are a lot of gun cases or problems in Inglewood. There are a lot of guns all over Chicago, but you're going to focus on do a pilot program on it. Just so happens to be on a community that's 91% Black. And then according to the statistics, according to reports, violent crimes and gun crimes are on the decline. Not enough, but they're on the decline. So what's the motivation behind this? And then to do it without there being any conversation with anybody. What's the motivation?
Well, and I know that's a rhetorical question because we both know the answer is politics. I want to get reelected again. I'm going to do whatever I think those people out there want. That's all I'm concerned. I don't care about the rights of these people. I care about getting reelected. That's what it comes down to. You know that, though, and I know that. And if you don't have the power because you can't get a job, you have a bad education, no education. And I teach people, this is amazing to me. I teach people to read who are graduates from high school, graduates from public high school in Chicago, who can't read. I mean, they can read like 20% of the newspaper. They just move them on. But the bottom line is nobody cares unless you've got political power. That's a matter of fact. I come from a small town in Minnesota. I had no meaning. I couldn't imagine anybody more naive than I was 40 years ago. Now I just see it as just, what would you expect? What would you expect? I mean, there's nothing from the cops' point of view. They're just going to get all these bad people. If they don't have a gun, they're not bad. If they have a gun, they're bad. And the cops get to determine who's going to get charged. Nobody else.
Who's to say, because there's no policing of the cops now, you've gotten a free hand to do this. Who's to say that the cops don't plant guns on these people that they have been wanting to somehow catch, and they can't catch? But now we have another vehicle to disadvantage people's rights.
Right. And what's the question? What's your question?
Well,
know this is rhetorical. I mean, you're right.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Right.
Who's
so
so
they came forth and said that there were 41 cases, right? 41 cases since January 1st that has come through this. Only 30 of the 41 cases withstood the court's scrutiny, which means that they got it wrong 35% of the time. In my math, any test or exam that anybody took, if you only scored a 65, you fail that exam. So
but you're not a cop. You're not a cop. That's the difference. You're talking about fairness and objectivity on one hand. You're talking about them just making a decision, the cops. And prior to this is 20 years ago when I was a state's attorney, prior to felony review, the cops determined who was going to get charged and who wasn't. And the state had nothing to do with it. I remember rushing around as a state's attorney, approving or disapproving cases. No, you can't prove this case. I don't care whether it happened or not. When it gets to court months from now, the state's attorney is going to say, I'm just going to dismiss this case. I can't prove it. But those people who are stuck in the middle, who got arrested because they're the ones who are suffering. The cops aren't suffering. They get paid every day, they get paid for all their time and overtime. I mean, but it comes down to political power. Really, that is what it comes down to as far as I can see. I mean, they get people
Well,
like myself.
it's
Who
political
try.
power. It's political power for them. It's political power for them, but it's complete injustice for the people who are stuck
That's true. I agree.
sitting in jail,
I
and
agree.
some police officers who have been given judiciary authority, which they don't have the training to do
Not even
what a
training,
prosecutor.
motivation. They don't have motivation. They don't have. It's not the training. It's they want to get whoever they can. They want to catch them, whether they did it or not.
Well,
Training the cops doesn't make a difference.
well, look, they said that they went through this extensive training. So if you had to go through some extensive training, then that means that there is a required ability and skill to determine whether or not something that you are filing a complaint or a charge for is something that is probably cause that it happened, and you can prove it.
That's true.
The problem we see is that should be determined at the time, or certainly when you made that arrest, rather than you charging a person only to find out months later or whenever it was determined that that case was not a chargeable offense or you couldn't prove it. But this person has sat in jail, being detained for all this period of time. Maybe they lost their job, maybe they lost their car, or whatever the case,
I
but they
know
have
that.
been damaged in the process.
I agree, and maybe they lost their wife. I know that. You're right. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, talking to the choir. I know that, and most of the defense attorneys I know are like me. You know, you just that is you make the best of what you have, and what you have at this point, as far as I can see, is a racist evaluation of what's going on. I know I'm racist. I know everybody is racist. Absolutely. They just don't know it. They don't think they are. Oh, some of my best friends are Negro. I mean, give me a break. All right. But I mean, everyone is racist. I mean, I pick juries all the time. Everybody's racist. Everybody has these not hidden, unappreciated evaluations. Like when I'm on a subway, and there's a bunch of black kids who are acting exactly like white kids would be, I get more scared. That's not. I mean, I can stop myself and say this is silly. There's no difference. But I just know there are hidden, and not even intentionally, although a lot of times it is intentional, prejudices that everybody has, and the cops are the same way. I don't think the cops are out of the ordinary. I mean, a lot of them are really straight people. A lot of them are bullies. There's no question about that. And the people who are getting screwed around are the people who don't have any political power. And you say, why would she do this? It's real clear why she would do this. Why not?
Well, I think that it's real clear and maybe the opinions of clarity may vary, but we certainly see this. And again, since you and I have had conversation, I've talked to a number of other people, public defenders, on all of the public defenders that I've talked to. Some of them view this as being an illegal decision that the state's attorney is taking and giving the police the powers to charge someone with a felony without there being an assistant state's attorney to weigh the weight of the alleged evidence.
Right. And that's true. It is you're talking about something that is a result of people not being accounted. If I don't think somebody is worth my time, I'm going to treat them differently than if I can identify with them. The cops don't identify, I think, with people who wear the pants down to their thighs. They have all their prejudices. Everybody has their prejudices. And it's not right. It's just simply the reality is the people who are getting screwed around are the people who get arrested and wait for trial. And and eventually plead guilty, not because they did it or didn't do it, just because they're
Right.
tired of being in jail.
They've been put in a position that they should never have been in the first place. Here,
That's true.
this
That's
is this is right. They've been put in a position that under normal circumstances they should never have been in that position. And I think to further empower the police with this kind of authority gives them even more power to be bullies or to disadvantage people, to be put into these positions to take advantage of them, and in a lot of cases ruin their lives. Now you say that people have prejudices for that very reason. For that very reason, which is true, people have their biasness, but there are some people who have those biasness for evil reasons. But for that very reason, in a police department that has the dubious honor of having the most wrongful convictions than any other police department in the country, 540. The next is Texas. And we have just gone through the budgetary amount of $84 million awarded in wrongful conviction cases this year, and we're just in April. To suggest that this is the best way to handle this is beyond insulting and beyond irresponsible. And in many of our views, this is tantamount to what we see happening on the federal level. Just forget about due process and forget about the Constitution. We're going to do whatever the heck we want to do because we have the power to do it.
right. And I think that's true. That is what's going on. That's what's going on. Let me say one other thing. I have a murder case, which is really, really well put together by the cops. And the only reason they have probable cause. The only reason they are doing that is because they know there's idiots like me and people like me, defense attorneys, who are going to hold them to that. But I mean, that's when it gets to trial. I'm a trial lawyer when it gets to trial. But what about before trial? That's what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And when it gets to trial, that's not the problem. I mean, the jury, as biased as they are, and you know this bit about people are presumed innocent until proven guilty. That's not true. I know that, but I mean,
Right.
That's what everybody says. You know, you're innocent until proven guilty. But the point is, if that's the case, well, you already know the answer. What I'm getting to is that you can't have a society where the police are not accountable, and they aren't accountable in that period of time between when they're arrested, when the person's arrested, and when you get to trial. At trial, they're halfway accountable. I mean, a jury of their peers, and again, what the hell is your peers? You know, somebody grows up in the suburbs. Everybody's from the suburbs, and they're trying some guy who lives in the middle of the South Side. That's not your peers. I mean, and that's illegal. I agree. I mean, but you can't expect that they are going to between when they're arrested and when they are actually at trial. Who represents them? Nobody. I mean, they're just waiting. I mean, there's nothing a defense attorney can do to stop that period of time. There's nothing they can do. At trial, they can get them off if they didn't do it. And it doesn't matter whether they did it. What matters is whether the state can prove that they did it. And if the state can't prove they did it, then there wasn't probable cause in the first place, and the case should be thrown out. But between when they're arrested and it's thrown out, or between when they're arrested and they're found guilty, what happens to these people? And what happens is outrageous. But I don't see a way.
Yeah, well, I think here's what they're saying, that rather than take a police officer off the beat.
This is all bullshit.
Now, I've absolutely, and I've taught, and I'm spoken to police officer that says that statement is completely false, because that doesn't mean that that police officer is going to be back on the beat in 5 or 10 minutes. And if that is the case, it's very problematic that you're making it that easy for a police officer to just say, okay, charge this person with this. I'm going back, to doing what I was doing before. Right. And like you say, that when it gets to trial, whenever it gets to trial, here is this person sitting because somebody didn't want to take the proper time to have a callback, which means that someone with the in the judiciary who has the ability to look at it and say, hey, police officer, this case has no merit. Release this person. This has no merit. But what she is saying is, even though it doesn't have any merit, just so we can get you back on the street, we'd rather have this person locked up until such time they get before a court, and let the court determine whether or not this is a chargeable or an actual felony that we can prove. Either way, it is wrong that you are going to have people detained like this, and to have the state's attorney, who is somebody that we're all supposed to be able to trust, that they're going to carry out their judicial duties in a very integral way, and that we're supposed to trust them. This does not lead us to trust this state's attorney.
You think? I agree.
And then we went to a town hall 2 weeks ago, and the commander of the 7th district sat up and said more than a dozen times in his statement that we should trust them. Well, not more than 2 weeks ago, $50 million was awarded to 4 teenagers. Well, they're not teenagers anymore, but they were teenagers that spent a collective 73 years in prison for something that they did not do because of police involvement, coercion. But we are supposed to think that this is okay, that we should trust the police, that they're going to do the right thing.
I don't think when someone says trust the police, they really do think you're going to trust the police. You're really that dumb. You're going to trust the police. What else are they going to say? We're evil, bad people? No, they're not going to say that. We take advantage of people, and especially if they're poor, we take advantage. They're not going to say that. They're going to say the good things about themselves. You got to trust us. I know better. I mean, I've been doing this for 20, 30 years. I mean,
right. Well, look, we want to. Listen, most of us want to support our police department. Unfortunately, our police department has a bad history. They have a lot of problems, and we're still paying for them. The taxpayers are paying dearly in this city more than any other municipality around the country. We are paying dearly for bad decisions and bad behavior of people who we were supposed to trust. What do you want to say? You're right. All right. You're a defense attorney. What would you say as a defense attorney to the state's attorney who would do something like this?
What I just said to you. You are a politician. You want to get not arrested. You want to get reelected. Your grandpa was and I don't know if this is true, but I think it's true. Your grandpa was a cop. Your either husband or your father. I think your father was a cop. I don't know, but I mean, it's something like that. You are going to have, just like I have, prejudices, biases, which I'm unaware of, and your bias is to get elected again. And you can go through all of the machinations of, oh, well, I'm being fair. But the bottom line is there are people who get arrested and they sit in jail, or they're on electronic monitoring. They lose their job, as you say, or they lose a bunch of things, their housing, whatever. It's not fair. And what would I say to that person? I wouldn't say anything, because I know where they're coming from. I said I was as naive as you could imagine when I came here. I'm not any longer, but I'm not in the least surprised she would say that. What would you
Mhm.
expect her to say? Look at
Well,
that.
listen, you're being very forthcoming, and certainly we appreciate that. But let me ask you this: do you believe in your legal judgment that there are grounds for a lawsuit to reverse this decision that the state's attorney has made?
For sure, for sure. But I don't think you're going to win it. Yeah, I think it's absolutely legal grounds for it, but I don't think it's going to be won because the people who are going to bring it represent people who don't have a voice in our government. They think they do because they get to go to court and they get to sue people, but they really don't. Nobody cares whether somebody's poor. Nobody cares. Like, I'm sure you walk down the street, see people lying on the pavement. Nobody cares about that. How many times have I stopped and, here, let me help you up and all this stuff. You just, there's nothing other, as an attorney, as a defense attorney, that's what I want to do. I want to defend cases. I'm clear that some of the people who I represent, without question, violated the law. I'm also clear that there are some people, everybody has done something like I'm sure you're a thief, you've stolen a pencil, but realistically,
Yes.
it shouldn't have anything to do with what's going on a political level. But it does, absolutely. It's politics. It's not fair. It just isn't fair at all. But the only reason the cops are as inhibited as they are is because there's people out there who are defense attorneys. They have to the cops actually have to jump through hoops if there's somebody watching. But as you described, on the street, there's nobody watching. I have clients who were stopped for nothing, except they're black or they look really poor. But no legal reason whatsoever, none. The car was searched, and the only ones I have are the ones where they find a gun. But if they don't find a gun, they usually let them go. If they want to plant a gun, how do you prove that? You only can prove it at trial. So these people sit in jail for a long time, or they're on electronic monitoring, and they lose a bunch of stuff. Can't go certain places. They can't go to work. Some can go to work, some can't. But until it gets to trial, there's nothing that I can think of that I can do. What do? Shout at the cops? Tell them, they're not being fair? They know that.
Well, you said that you use the term accountable or
Right.
accounted for, right?
Right.
And we know that there are many times that the police have abused their powers, abused them.
No question about it.
And in many cases, they have been given a pass for abusing those powers for whatever convenient way they found to justify that.
That's true.
And you don't think that this is winnable if there's a legal ground and we have a judiciary, and if there's a legal ground to bring this, and there is legal justification to say that what she has done, does not pass legal muster, and we can't win it, then that's almost to say that we can't have any confidence in our judiciary. We've got to be able to have confidence in some place to hold the line.
I don't have any problem with judges. There's some judges who just want to be judges. They just want to be powerful. That's all they're interested in. But the vast, vast majority of judges are pretty objective, and they don't really care. They're not out to help or hurt. They're just played as it is. All right. But I'm not talking about the criminal justice system when you get to the trial. I'm talking about the criminal justice system from when you're first arrested up until you get.
This is why we find this such a great problem? Because this is where the damage happens.
I know. I agree.
And this is where the damage happened. And this is where there should be even stronger scrutiny of the police
According
at this point.
Should be. What do you mean? It should be. I mean, morally speaking, yeah, it should be. Politically speaking, in what context are you talking about? It should be. What's right and wrong? I agree with you there.
Absolutely, what's right or wrong. But the reality is that we know that we have a problem within our police department. So therefore, we should be taking, you got the consent decree and all that sort of stuff. So the reality is we should be taking a much more surgical approach to evaluating what happens at the time, from the time of an arrest to detaining a person before that person is carted off to a detention center, to wait for whatever time that the process gets to them, to put them before a court to determine that, you know what, you should not have been here in the first place.
Right. Or you shouldn't have been charged with this. You should have been charged with something else. You're in a fight with a bar. Somebody comes up, touches your wife in the breast, and you punch him.
Right.
And he dies because he hits his head on the bar, the bottom of the bar. Well, that's not murder. It could be reckless homicide. But it's not just the case will be thrown out because there's no merit to it. But he shouldn't have been charged with murder. And most of the time, when the lawyers come in on the white horse, they're not winning the case. They're winning the particular charges, but they're getting them reduced completely because you'd never have been charged in the first place. And that's what intimidates most people into accepting a plea. If you're charged with a murder, when all you did is get in a fight with a guy and accidentally he died, but you're charged with murder and you're looking at a minimum of 15 years and probably 50, that's a hell of a lot different than if you're charged for a battery, for which you can do 3 years, okay, max. That's if you're found guilty. But I mean, the reason there's so many pleas is because there's so much overcharging. And that's another thing, whether we talk about it or not, that's another thing the police can do. They can charge whatever they want, even if they think there's no basis for it. There's a possible basis, but it's not a probable cause basis. And I don't think I have. I don't know. I don't know what to ask. I don't know what to say. I mean,
yeah,
you're right.
All right. Well, listen. I think that we can attest that we both think that this is ludicrous and it's problematic, and unfair.
Right.
And we're gonna see what we could do to try to do something about it, because we see this is leading to more problems and more damage for people. And just because somebody may have a record does not mean that person should be open season to further, wrongful scrutiny, targeting, right? Yeah. Let me ask you a question. We got a few minutes left. I want to ask you a question about something else.
Before you do, nothing's going to change unless there's people like you. You obviously aren't intimidated by the system. And unless there's people like you doing what you're doing and me doing what I'm doing, nothing's going to change. I mean, okay, what were you going to ask me?
Yeah. Well, that means that people like me and you have to coalesce to stand up to the system and say, hey, what you're doing is not right.
They don't care whether it's right or not. You make up this idea.
That's why you and I exist, that we have to do something about those people who don't care.
That's true.
Right. All right. Let me ask you this. There's something else that is a looming problem. For a living, I'm in the real estate business. That's how I pay my bills, and that's what affords me to do what I do here. We have a squatters problem. We have this thing where people are taking over people's property, which, from what I understand, if I come to your house and I enter your house without your say so, is that a civil matter or is that a crime?
If I say to you, don't come into my house, I've given you the formal notice that you can't come in and it's my property, that's a crime. But if I don't say anything, it's civil. It's like all these
Wait,
people who,
so, well, wait a minute. So if you're not at home, you take your family, you go take your family out for dinner, you lock your doors, you turn your alarm on your house, and somebody breaks into your house and you weren't there to tell them not to go in, that's a civil matter?
no, not at all. That's burglary. That's burglary.
Okay.
There's a sign on the door, whether you see it or not, that says, don't come in here. That's why I locked the door. This is
Right.
my house. I thought you meant
Right.
if you let somebody in your house and you don't tell them to go, until you tell them to go, it's civil. If you
No,
tell them to
I
go,
don't.
you
I don't
don't.
mean that. I have a property. I bought a property. I put thousands of dollars into buying this property and thousands of dollars into renovating this property. And I am going to put this property on the market for sale. And I go home only to come back to see that somebody has set up camp in my house.
Right.
And I call the police and I say to the police, these people broke into my house and are living in my house. They're not my tenants. They don't have any right to be there. I need them removed. The police say, well, this is a civil matter. This is not a criminal. And I say, no, they broke into the house.
That's like what the cops used to say when it was a domestic problem. Oh, this is between the husband and wife. This isn't a criminal matter. That doesn't mean that it's true because they say that. I think that is criminal. They're taking your property without your permission. They're occupying things for which you can get money without your permission. You're not allowing them to do it. And they know that. But what are you going to do? Sue them? They get no money. That's why they're living in that house.
No, I think they should be. But I have to go now. I now have to go to court. I have to evict some people. I have no idea who they are, and I have to go to court
to do it. You have to pay an attorney to find out who they are.
Right, and I have to. My house is tied up for 5, 6, 7, 8 months with some people who literally broke into my house.
Okay.
Well, so that's what I'm asking is that how is it that if the police can't determine that this is a crime and the police say that this is a civil matter, but then we're going to give the police the power to determine that they can charge somebody with a felony?
Are you saying it's inconsistent?
Well, no, it's not inconsistent in the way that they're behaving.
No,
but it's certainly
logic.
Yes. So wait a minute. Well, there's a bill out. And I'm going to be talking to one of the state representatives about it because it's happening more and more and more, where people are taking over people's property illegally, but they're calling it a civil matter. It's not a civil matter. It's an absolute crime.
Okay, I agree. The cop doesn't agree. So who you?
I don't know. We got some backward stuff going on here. Some serious backward stuff that's going on. Only in Chicago and Cook County, mind you.
Don't agree. Don't agree. Look at California. Yeah. Look at all the homeless people in California. You're telling me this only happens in Chicago?
No. What I'm telling you is that the possession of people's property is to being able to get your property back. There is no worse eviction process than Cook County in the country.
I don't know.
No worse. In Florida and California and other places, somebody goes and breaks into your house, the police comes, you file a report, and they remove them or arrest them, get them out of your property. Here in Chicago, because we have conflated, right? Because there is nobody any more compassionate than me about people who are in very desperate, unhoused, homeless conditions. But I'm not going to conflate that condition with somebody who goes and violates another person's property and takes over somebody's property under the disguise that we have a housing problem. I'm not going to convey that. So you have these political housing groups that somehow bully representatives or people in the legislature that are afraid to figure out that let's do something about the unhoused,
They're not
but
afraid.
we
They're not
need to
afraid. They don't care. They don't care, and those people aren't voting for them. So what? Why? Why do? It's selfishness. That's all it comes down to. It's not like they don't know. They know. They just don't care. You make it sound like it's like like people really care. They don't.
well, we got a serious problem then.
That's
We got a
true. No,
serious problem.
that's true.
We got a serious problem that if they don't care, then we can just have anarchy all over the place.
You think that's true that they don't care? Maybe I'm getting too cynical. I don't think
Yeah.
so.
No,
I've
no.
seen it.
I think that there are many people who are in public spaces that do not care,
I do too.
and they should not be there.
That's true. What are you doing about it? What is anybody doing? You're doing something about it because you've got a podcast going on. What's the other people doing? What am I doing? Nothing, really. I'm not out leading the marches. I'm not, getting the folks together and all stuff. Unless somebody does that, nothing's going to change.
Well, you said some things that are but that are very crystal clear. You said some things that are important, but there's we may need to enlist you to help with doing something about this.
Contact me. I'll be happy to.
All right.
You pick your battles. Okay.
You pick your battles. Yeah, you pick your battles. But I think by picking your battles and taking some of those battles and taking them to task can help to answer some other problems as well. So I think that there are important battles that help us across the board. I mean, there are a number of things that need to be addressed. But I think that what you said is one of the things that we are trying to do, and certainly I'm trying to do, is to get more people involved in the process, because I think that that's how the problems get answered, by having more people involved in the process to hold the people accountable, starting with our people in our legislative positions, the people who are holding our public judiciary positions, all of these positions. If they don't care, then we need to have a process by which to remove them, which is having real power at the ballot box.
There you go, the ballot box. That's true. That's what it amounts to. Politics. Hello, politics.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to have more conversation with you, and certainly want to have more conversation with you and powwow with you offline, so that we can start answering some of these problems. You can provide us with some information to do this. So I want to thank you, Francis Bumgard from Bumgard and Associates. You also hold some other positions.
Yeah.
What are some other stuff? Tell us how people can get in contact with you and how people can follow what you're doing.
I don't want to be using this forum to generate business. I don't need it.
But you're also doing some other work with the bar association or something like that, right?
I'm the head. I and another guy are co-chairs of a criminal law committee.
Okay.
If you've ever herded cats, that's what that job is. Every defense attorney thinks he's special. All right, including me. I'm not going to put up with this stuff, but that's the only kind of personality you have that's going to say, wait a minute, you can't do this. That doesn't work. All right. That's illegal. I don't care who you are. Only people who are like cats maybe are like that. I don't know, but that's one of the things I do. But I mean, I've been kicking around for a long time, and I know you're not that old, but that wisdom is nothing more than just screwing up and learning from it.
Right.
And that's what I've done. I know a lot
right.
Solely because I was so naive. All right. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I love a straightforward, straight talking conversation. Love it. Because I think we can learn so much from it, and then take it and do something with it. Sometimes it's gut wrenching, but we need some of that. We need some straight talk. to figure out what we need to do to resolve some problems. So I want to thank you very much for giving me your time on this Good Friday night. I'm going to let you go so that you can be with your family and have a great Easter weekend.
Let's not go overboard, all right? But I do appreciate what you do and who you are. I really do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me in.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Good talking with you.
Call me
All right,
anytime.
folks. All right. Appreciate it. We're going to call you again. All right, folks. Listen, that's going to do it for this special edition. I want to thank Janice Baumgart for coming on and spending Francis, I should say, Baumgart, for coming on and spending time with me talking about this real problematic issue. We still have to do something about this, and I am going to be looking for you to join us to do something about this. There's other people, I believe, and other people believe, just like Baumgart believed, that it's wrong, but we still have to fight it. And we cannot feel like we are powerless, but we can be very powerful when we have more of us involved in the process. That's why 10 by 10 to win is the process by which we can have more people involved to hold the people who we have entrusted with our governmental positions to do the right thing. And as he said, people who don't care, it's not hard to figure out the people who don't care. And the people who don't care, we have to show them, right? Like he said, the state's attorney, she got elected and she wants to get elected again. But we can't allow for her to get elected again playing with the lives of other people for political reasons. So we have to hold her to an account. And if she's going to make decisions that are antithetical to the protection of people's rights, then we cannot sit on the sideline and pretend or allow for that to go unanswered. We do not have room or time for despair. We have to get active and we have to be vigilant about it. And guess what? Do not be afraid of people in public office. I know that there are people who are afraid of people in public office because I've heard, well, you better be careful because you're messing around with, there's a lot of money there. Let me tell you, the people who are in public office are more afraid of you than you think that you are of them. Because you do have the power. Now, if you want to just make noise, they don't mind people who are just making noise. Because you're going to make noise for 15 minutes, go stand on a corner, wave, a made up, placard or something, and then go back home, and that's going to be it. And they're going to go on doing what they've been doing. But those of us who will organize with real information, with real strategy, to hold these people to account, those people are afraid of that because it puts the reality and the truth of what actually is happening right in the headlights or in the headlines. So we cannot sit on the sideline, and we certainly cannot be afraid. And those of us who have the wherewithal, we have got to engage the process because we just cannot allow for the kinds of dysfunction that we see looming around as though it is okay or as though that it is normal. We cannot adjust to abnormality as though this is just going to be the way life is going to be. That is unacceptable. I won't accept it, and neither should you. All right, listen, we're going to be coming back to you on Monday night with another edition of the People Show on our regular show. Monday night, joining me is going to be State Representative LaShawn Ford. He's going to be talking with us about House Bill 1563, which is the new squatters bill that is going forward to protect property owners from people taking over their properties, and they're having to spend thousands of dollars and months and months and months to get their property. So we're going to be talking with LaShawn K. Ford on Monday night. So make sure that you tune in and you join us right back here on Monday night on intellectualradio.com, Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube. Please go to my YouTube page and register there. Like and share this program with on your social media. Let's get more people engaged in this process, not to just watch a show, but to engage ourselves in the process, to mobilize, to organize, and to attack the problems that we are having, like the problem that we're having with the current Cook County State's Attorney, who is basically telegraphed to us that she is going to do whatever it is that she wants to do, whether it's for her political motivation or whether she wants to lock up people that she may not care much about. Whatever the case may be, we cannot allow for her to think that she can be comfortable doing this, which means that we have to go after everything that she is doing that is unjust. All right, that's going to do it for me tonight. I want you all to go out, have a great, great Resurrection Easter weekend with your families. It's the weekend and the Day of Atonement for all of us, and the Day of Atonement. And part of that is to get active, to get energized, to make sure that we deal with these issues that are going forward. Thank you so much for tuning into the program, and I'll see you Monday night. Good night.